Hey, good Friday, everybody. Brian Bledsoe with you here, host of the Desert Farmer Podcast. Thanks for joining me today. And much like we talked about just a couple of days ago, we still have an awful lot of weather to talk about with this storm system that's coming through. And I'm sure it's almost information overload to you, or at least it has been off and on over the past several days if you've been browsing weather information, whether it's social media or across the internet or whatever. And as I always say, we've never had more information at our fingertips at any time in existence. And at the same time, we also have to sort through a lot of the disinformation that's out there too. So it's kind of a good and a bad type of a thing where we have all this information, but you know what? If you're overloading someone with that and you're not focusing on the message, well, a lot of times that message can get lost. So I do my best on the Desert Farmer podcast or anybody that I work with or work for to really focus on that message and make that message resonate in conjunction with the data that we actually analyze to come up with a forecast. So I think it's a really important message, especially in a storm system like this, where it's going to have huge travel implications. It's going to have implications as far as road conditions, travel, air, whatever, and also kind of how you conduct your business around the ranch or around the farm, especially if you have animals that you have to tend to. So I'm going to walk you through that today on this episode of the Desert Farmer Podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to be able to get to chat with you. And just a few of my thoughts this morning on this storm system. There really hasn't been any significant changes with the temperature, the wind, or the timing of this storm system. Okay. Those things have been pretty much rock solid. A little wiggle here or there, but nothing huge as far as any deviations from what we've been talking about. Now, the snow amounts that are going to take place are going to remain in flux. All right. And that's just the way these storm systems work, where we have heavier bands that set up in one spot. Those bands don't impact everybody. So you have these bigger total differences across short distances. That's going to be something that we're going to have to wrestle with off and on over the next couple of days. So that's why I always say focus on the trend, not the individual number. It's the trend. Is there really that big of a difference between, 7 inches of snow versus 9 inches of snow? No. But is there a big difference between 2 inches of snow versus 12 inches of snow? Obviously. So if you're looking at the trend in the forecast and it's edging that way up, okay, in terms of totals, well, then you got to pay attention to something like that. This storm will be completely exiting the region by midday Sunday, but the cold is going to hang around and the coldest temperatures are going to be on Monday morning. And keep in mind, if you're going to be in an area that's going to receive deep snow cover, it's going to take a while for that snow to melt off. There's going to be a pretty good glacier that develops in the wake of this storm across some parts of the plains. So that warm up is going to be slow. Let's talk some details today. The forecast wind speed and direction. I'm going to take you from today. Right now, I'm recording this at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, Mountain Time. I'm going to walk you through this until Monday morning, 5 o'clock. You might say, well, why are you taking us through that long a period of time? Well, with all that fluff on the ground, even if we don't see a whole lot of wind with the storm system that comes through, what if we were to see a big burst of wind immediately following that blows all that fluff around? Well, that's why I want to walk you through this forecast. So this morning, this wind right here that you see from southern and southwest Kansas down through the panhandles, western Oklahoma, all of that's in response to that Arctic front that's tracking southward. This wind across eastern Colorado, okay, that's the upslope wrapping around the high pressure that's up here to the north. That's why we're seeing wind that's doing this and the wind doing this right here. But gusts in these bands, 30, 35 miles an hour. Watch what happens though with the trend. A lot of those higher end wind speeds go away late this afternoon and especially tonight, and they never really come back as that Arctic high pressure settles its way southward. You really don't have a big temperature gradient across the plains, or a not temperature gradient, pressure gradient across the plains. And without a pressure gradient, you just don't have a whole lot of wind. So after that initial push comes through with this Arctic front, there will still be some wind, but it won't be as high end. And when the snow comes in, all right, and sits on the ground, there just won't be a whole lot of wind around to blow it either. So this is a really good thing with this storm that we don't have a ton of wind through through the meat of it. As we head into later tonight and obviously into the weekend. If we did have a lot of wind with that, it would obviously be a lot worse because this snow is very dry, very powdery, and it would blow around quite effectively. So that's the wind part of this. Forecast temperature animation today, right through Saturday morning, looks like this. Obviously, 10 o'clock temperatures this morning. We've got single digits above and below zero here. We've got teens at best in this red, and then farther south, there's pretty big temperature difference here. All right, we've got mid 70s over far south Texas right now, awaiting the approach of that front. So if we put this into motion, notice that that Arctic front still trucks southward right through early tomorrow morning. But keep this in mind: far south Texas is going to start out a whole lot differently than areas up here over the northern Texas panhandle, and you can see that with that temperature animation very plainly. What about the actual temperatures on Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon? Saturday morning, we're starting out around 70 in South Texas, around 1 right there in Canadian, -1 in Perryton, 4 Amarillo, up here around Guyman, Boise City. We're talking about numbers, around a degree or two below zero, and then obviously colder than that the farther north you go. But afternoon temperatures, look at this. These are high temperatures on Saturday. We're around 90 in McAllen versus 8 there in Perryton. All right. That temperature gradient from north to south really acts to fuel a storm system. And that's exactly what we're going to have in two different waves as it kind of comes through. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a little bit. But let's take care of the temperature forecast throughout here. Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, Sunday morning temperatures, again, below zero. You can find your location and clearly see what temperature that it's going to be, but we're probably going to start out around 6 degrees in Lubbock versus around 7, 8 below zero up here in North Platte. And then down here along the Gulf Coast, we're probably going to be numbers in the middle to upper 20s right there. All right. Afternoon temperatures, cold too. Only 30s and 40s down here along the Texas Gulf Coast, unless you get way into far south Texas, where you might actually make temperatures back into the 50s. But up here across most of West Texas, I think 20s, 20s, teens, the farther north you go, probably only 13 or so there in Cheyenne, 17 in North Platte. You get over here toward Omaha, probably only around 17 degrees or so. Dodge City might make around 20 if you're lucky, depending on how much snow we've got on the ground. But still, quite a bit of chill here. Monday morning, as I said, coldest morning of the lot here, where temperatures are going to be in the single digits and teens below zero, anywhere in this kind of aqua green, kind of bluish shading. We're probably going to start out around 2 below there in Lubbock, 3 below there in Amarillo. Some of these numbers are probably going to end up being a little bit lower. That 5 below in Canadian could probably be lower. Childress, Texas, probably going to have a good amount of snow on the ground too. So if we clear that sky out, and with that snow on the ground, I could easily see you dropping between about 5 to 7 below zero with that right there. And areas here across Oklahoma, up into northwest Arkansas, southwest Missouri, same story. I could easily see these temperatures ending up just a little bit lower than that. Afternoon temperatures on Monday, where you got the deep snow cover, that's where you're going to have the coldest numbers here. Back here across parts of the western high plains, where you really don't have much in the way of snow cover or any at all, you're going to see temperatures rebound back into the 40s and upper 30s here. Might make low 30s there in Dalhart, get above freezing, see some sunshine. Obviously, it'll just go a long ways to feeling a whole lot better. But the farther east you go, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. Future radar animation. This is from this morning's high resolution rapid refresh model. And these are never perfect. All right. And there's going to be some tweaks along the way. So I want to qualify that. But it gives you the general idea here of what we're likely to see from this morning right through Sunday morning. So this morning, we've got a couple of showers here in the green. We've got a little bit of light freezing drizzle across where you're seeing the pinks and some flurries here where you're seeing the light blues. But the main first push comes up late this afternoon and into tonight. You can see that right there. And then we get a little bit of a break tomorrow. Do you see the break here? And then the next push comes in tomorrow night through Sunday morning. So there's probably going to be a lot of folks that say, hey, what's going on with the storm? It's all over. No, remember, this is coming through in a couple of different main waves. And this initial wave is going to produce some pretty nasty weather overnight tonight, but this trailing wave is also going to do the same thing in the form of some rain down along the coast, even some thunderstorms tonight along that Gulf Coast, ice, snow, whatever. As I said, thankfully, we don't have a ton of wind to go along with when these main bursts of precipitation are coming through. If you're looking for any silver lining in the storm, that's the one to really focus on here. And if we watch this one more time, the back end of this storm system will be clearing eastern parts of New Mexico by the early morning hours on Sunday. So you can see this next burst works its way through, and then we start to see this storm system really wind down from west to east here by Sunday morning. Let's look at snowfall probabilities. I've been doing this, with you when we look at snowfall projections here, and this is from last night's run. So this would have been the middle of the night run of the European ensemble. With the different members here. So what we're looking at here is probability in percentages of over 3 inches of snow through this storm system. And southeast Wyoming, eastern Colorado, southwest Nebraska, even parts of western Kansas, down in the northeast New Mexico and the western part of the panhandles, your probability of seeing greater than 3 inches of snow is not good at all. Outside of the mountains here, areas farther east, you can see those probabilities tick. So what this means is any snow that falls from southeast Colorado, west and southwest Nebraska, eastern Colorado, down into northeast New Mexico, and down here toward Boise City, Clayton, the snow that you see is likely going to be less than 3 inches. And in some cases, you may not see any. Kansas, look at that. Big burst here as far as those probabilities are concerned. But something to be mindful of, those probabilities really drop off once you get north out of Kansas. So there will be a pretty sharp gradient, not only on the west side, but also on the north side of this as you move through. All right. But those are the probabilities for over 3 inches for Kansas, southern Nebraska. Down here across eastern New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma. Again, this area, and I'm kind of highlighting it here. All right. Bullseyeing these areas back here to the west and southwest. This area is going to be the alley where greater than 3 inches is going to be a pretty good likelihood. And really, this quadrant here, okay, that I'm going to highlight has some of those really high end probabilities too, greater than 80%. So, as I said, the drier air, less energy punching in from the northwest will limit those snowfall amounts here across northeast New Mexico, southeast Colorado, far southwest Kansas, and those northwest panhandles. Keep that in mind. What about 6 inches or greater? 6 inches or greater, we really don't have anything to worry about here for most of Colorado outside of the mountains, western Kansas, southwest Nebraska. We go to Kansas. I still think that this area, even those probabilities are less, okay, I still think along and southeast of that line, that's where your best potential is to see greater than 6 inches of snow. Areas back to the northwest, hey, you could still see some decent snow, 4, 5, 6, maybe even up to 7 inches up here, all right? But the lion's share of those bigger totals is going to favor these areas farther to the southeast. And you can really see that here if we widen the view farther south. But look at this. We got a 58% chance of seeing greater than 6 inches of snow. That's Lubbock. That's an 88 in Plainview. That's a 98 there in Childress, Texas. So the gradient will really tighten up there from north to south and from east to west. And what the model is trying to do is really pinpoint where those heavier snow bands are going to be. There's going to be a heavy snow band here somewhere in the panhandle. And right now, the farther south across the panhandle you go, I think that's probably where your better burst is going to be. And certainly some real big totals here across the most of Oklahoma, good part of Arkansas, up into southwest and southern Missouri. A foot or more, again, we don't have any probabilities there in Colorado or the surrounding areas. There's still some potential here, I do think, in the southeast corner of Kansas, north central Oklahoma, where we could possibly see amounts maybe up to a foot or so. But those bigger probabilities of a foot or more are contained here in this area that I'm highlighting. All right. Interesting to see that we still have some very low probabilities of a foot or more here back across the Texas Panhandle. And that, again, is because the model is trying to resolve where that heavy band of snow is going to set up. But I think the longer duration probably gets it done more effectively here the farther east you go. Colorado, let's look at some specific numbers here through Sunday. This is from the National Blend of Models that shows you how much snow potential is likely. I'm a fan of this projection, especially for Colorado and the surrounding areas, because I think, as we said with the probabilities, anything here is likely going to be less than 3 inches. Now, if we look at the last night's overnight run of the European deterministic model, again, it shows some higher totals here, but I think these are the very high end of what could happen. All right. I think the blend here is a much better version of what's going to happen than probably this. But even with the European deterministic model here, okay, you've got some holes in here, and that's not a good sign. Areas farther east and outside of the mountains going to have much better shot of seeing snow here. Nebraska, this is the national blend, and you can see it really hints at that tight gradient once you get out of Kansas here. Okay, along and south of that line, probably better totals, certainly. But still some light snow totals here in that Arctic air upslope here across western Nebraska. The deterministic model kind of went crazy with a few bands here across western Nebraska. But again, I think this would be the very high end as far as totals here. I think that the national blend is a much better uh, resolution here or solution to the model. Kansas. This is the national blend. Again, good snow totals here, but those heavier totals are going to likely be southeast of that line for the most part. You still got some decent totals back here over central Kansas, but the big boom probably takes place over the southeast corner down here into Oklahoma. But notice the gradient here. All right. You go from about 3 or less, that's up here around St. Francis, even less than that, down here to almost 6 in Dodge City. A little over 3 there in Elkhart, a little over 1 here in Springfield. Guyman around 4, Perryton. They could be a little bit light with these here. I think we could get a little bit more snow back here in the Eastern Panhandle. If we look at the European deterministic, it's not a whole lot different, but it does have those bigger totals here, greater than 10 inches okay, over that southeast corner down in Oklahoma. The interesting thing about that is the dry nudge here from southeast Colorado, southwest Kansas, down in those northwest panhandles. And I've been talking about that dry wedge coming in from the northwest all week long here. This is looking at a little wider view, Missouri, Northwest Arkansas, Oklahoma. Again, this is the national blend. I don't think it's doing a great job accounting for that potential band that's going to possibly settle back into the panhandle. But I do think it's trying to resolve it better. That 7 there in Childress, probably too low right now because the regular European deterministic's got amounts up to 16. All right. And I think that 16 is probably too high too. All right. Reality is likely somewhere in the middle. But notice how these amounts in the northern part of the Texas Panhandle have been chopped as the model resolves where that heavier band sets up farther south. It may only be a few counties wide there in the Panhandle, but just know that if you're in that band, it's going to snow like gangbusters. Either side of that band, you're still going to see some snow, but it's going to change very quickly whether you're going northward out of that band or southward out of that band. And farther south here, keep in mind, you're going to have some ice to deal with too. I haven't even talked about that just yet. Texas, centered on that, as I said, I think the national blend might be a little bit too light back in this sector and across the eastern panhandle, but certainly favors higher amounts farther east. You could even say back here across eastern New Mexico, we could be a little bit light. That 4 around Clovis might be a little bit light. 3 around Tucumcari. But if you look at the European deterministic, you got 10 right there in Clovis. So again, I think that's the very high end as far as what you could see. Same thing here in Lubbock. Plainview, that 15 is probably too high. And as I said, the 16 there in Childress, a little bit too high, as is probably some of these higher end amounts of around 20 over here in Oklahoma are probably too high. All right. Freezing rain and sleet totals here. Again, don't look at the individual number. Just notice that this corridor is where you've got that mixing going on with the sleet, the snow, freezing rain in there. We've got freezing rain. That's where all this pink is. So this area, this pink, that's where you're going to have the best potential to see the most freezing rain here. And that's especially true right along the Red River, northeast Texas, southeast Oklahoma, over here in Arkansas, northern Louisiana, northwest Mississippi, even into western Tennessee. That alley is probably going to be where you're going to have the greatest threat of seeing the most freezing rain and the biggest complications. Freezing rain, I hate freezing rain. It just creates such a mess. But areas farther north, you're too cold to see any of that ice. You're just going to be seeing snow. All right. Let's look at a little bit beyond this storm. Our forecast upper level weather pattern from the 26th through the 2nd. All right. So this will be Monday morning. And again, we've got that main storm system exiting the plains, moving into the Midwest, and we're trying to get a ridge to build back out here to the west. So our pattern is doing something like that, trying to build a ridge out here to the west. If we put this into motion, notice that trough exits eastward, but notice how it kind of a tail end kind of clips it. There's another wave that's going to come down as far as chilly air, probably around the 30th, 31st, that is going to reinforce some of that cold air back here across the Midwest. Now, while that's happening, we've got this big ridge building in here across the West. There will be a pretty significant warming trend take place out here in the West that will eventually spill its way eastward, but probably not impacting the middle part of the country until we get the last day or so of January and into the first couple of days of February. And what that means here in terms of temperature anomalies for that 7-day period, all right, from the 26th through the 2nd, these are the temperature anomalies that are going to take place. And obviously, okay, this is in response to the model thinking there's going to be a glacier there with the snow, especially southern and southeast Kansas, Oklahoma, back here into parts of the panhandle. You get either side of that deep snow cover, these temperatures won't be as bad. And then we obviously have warming coming in over the top here across Montana, Wyoming, but certainly from central and east, country's going to be colder than average for the next week. Drier than average? Yes. All right. There's not another big storm system coming in behind this. So you see these dry anomalies here across the plains and back through the Southwest. That's just simply indicating that the weather pattern is going to be quiet. There will be some downtime here in the pattern after we get past this significant storm that's going to cruise through. Okay. That's what I have for you today, folks. If you've got any questions, comments, as I always say here on the Desert Farmer Podcast, if there's something that I can do for you in this capacity for your business or for you individually, you know exactly how to reach out to me. I always put this contact information at the end of the Desert Farmer Podcast. There will be additional forecast information coming in this afternoon. So just make sure you stay current, whether that's with me or your other favorite meteorologist. Make sure you're staying current with the forecast updates because, like I said, there will be some changes that take place over the next 12 to 24 hours that will be fairly impactful with exactly how this storm system is going to move through. But as I said, the one saving grace with this storm, there won't be a ton of wind after we get past this initial burst out there for today. Any little bit of breeze stirring is going to make it feel a whole lot colder, but it could certainly be a whole lot worse if we had a bunch of wind to deal with too. Folks, I hope you are doing well on this Friday. Rolling into the weekend, obviously got big plans going on. Hope you don't have to travel too much within this storm system, but if you do, make sure you take care of yourself, and I'll be chatting with you again here real soon on the Desert Farmer Podcast. Be well.